kind of wanted to follow the energy, go through that little question in at the end or at the beginning around most, not just joyous, but regrettable purchase online. I'd love to hear from you two. Actually, you should have introduced yourself first. That's going to be most important. Introduce yourself, and then let's hear about your most regrettable purchase that you unboxed straight away and thought, this needs to go in the bin.
I'm Brie, and I'm the Global Paid Media Manager at Microsoft for Consumer Retail. My most regrettable purchase was literally last week. So on the weekend, I went to Winterfest. If anyone knows what that is, it's a medieval fair. And my friends decided last minute that we're going to actually dress up. And so I bought from Shein because it was last minute and I needed a costume. And
No
it was
judgment. That's it.
And it just was not anything like what it looked like in the ad. So yeah, I didn't wear a costume.
Nice. Hi everyone, I'm Izzy Gallardo. I'm the Senior E-commerce Manager at Galderma, which is a leading dermatology company. I work in the consumer division across brands like Cetaphil and Benzac, which I hope some of you know. My most regrettable purchase, last year when I was back in the UK, I bought this pigmented blush from TikTok Shop, which made me look like a clown. So, not so good. I won't say what the brand was.
TikTok Shop coming too soon in Australia, apparently. We're still waiting. But yeah, two of my favourite things. We've got skincare that keeps you glowing, and we've got tech that keeps you clicking. So we're going to have a really interesting discussion here. Some of the things that you guys have talked about on the panels before have been really validating. We were just having coffee before and going, actually, a lot of this is really positive. I actually think these guys are ahead of the trends. The research that we saw from the report, fantastic, but actually, positively, it's not all doom and gloom. And we know that there are actually some things that we can do as brands to actually help you guys from a retail perspective and actually ensure that you're on the map. It's a great place to be right now, retail media, and we're really excited. So let's get into it. The first spicy question. Everyone wants to know where the money's going. Is it going up? Where's it coming from? You might not need to answer that one. But how are you guys looking at e-com and retail media and the changes, and what do the next 12 months look like?
I can kick off. So I work across a lot of different retailer channels. So I work across pharmacy, grocery and e-commerce. And what I can say is, although the retail media offerings vary quite a lot across all of those channels, there's been a lot of investment into those channels in retail media. And we have seen the capabilities really grow in the last 12 months, which has been great for us. Internally, I'd say a similar story. So we've been able to prove the ROI into retail media, and because of that, we've been able to gain incremental investment into that channel. So I think it's definitely here to stay. We've seen some really positive results, but yeah, it's just how we're going to scale that even further.
Over to you. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, retail media has always been a really key part of our consumer marketing mix as well from a retail perspective. I think that what is changing and what is going to continue to shift is the role of it and how we think of retail media. Particularly, I think, in electronics in Australia, only the last 12 to 24 months have some of the biggest partnerships of your commerce partners or your commerce tech partners have come out. And so with that's obviously we're starting to really explore those as well, and those are helping us bridge off-site and on-site targeting, have more of an integrated approach. So I think that that's also making us think a little bit differently about, if you think traditionally retail media, and we were talking about this earlier, what is retail media? We think of product search and on-site display, whereas I think, really at a very broad lens, retail media is any media that drives someone from understanding or discovering a product to deciding they might want it, to deciding they do want it, and then buying. So I think that that's kind of the big space as well, an important bit.
And I think, again, validating here for everyone in the audience from a brand perspective, great brands seeing retail media as part of the mix. It doesn't sit on its own, it doesn't live in isolation. It's very much part of how the guys are planning all of their media and solutions based on an objective, which I think someone was talking about earlier, really important. That was awesome, thank you. This bit's really exciting. Again, you're ahead of the trend, and I think some of the questions that were posed in the research, you guys are about to validate. So one of the points in the research called to the internal disconnect between trade and brand teams. So those are the teams internally that apparently turn up and share stuff back to the publishers that might not be cohesive. How do you guys kind of work together? And is that experience really true from a brand perspective? Are you working collaboratively or in silos?
Yeah, I can go first. I think I have an interesting perspective on this panel because my role is paid media marketing manager. So I work with the retail trade teams, but my role is really almost trying to piece those things together. And I think it's so important, and I love that the conversations that have been had earlier today around that everyone agrees that you need lots of people in the room. And I think that that's more true for retail media than any other kind, because in order to have like a cohesive consumer journey, message journey, you need all the right people in the room, and that's going to be, you know, trade, retail, brand, paid media, creative. You need all of those people in the room. And so particularly in my role and the way our team is structured, a huge focus for me is having to make sure that I have that connection with all the teams. So I work with the retail team, and, you know, we go, you know, for me, yes, I'm focused on the, you know, ad messaging and the media mix, but we need to make sure that whatever we're focusing on lands on the retailer site. Is that the same messaging in store? Right down to, like, if we're focusing on a product, do we have stock of that with our retailers? Like, all of those things that matter and that need to go into it. But I think if you're not necessarily, if there was like an action from that, I would say that, you know, depending on who you are in the room, if you're an agency, if you're you know, from a performance marketing lens, if you're retail or e-commerce, is thinking about, I guess, how can you, if you're not structured in that way and you have silos, how can you get everyone in the room? Like, can you create forums to have that conversation? Can you proactively have a planning session and have a representative from each of those teams? But I think you do need it. It's really important.
Yeah, and literally the same for us at Galderma. We definitely see a disconnect in how we are managing retail media. For example, I fully manage our e-com channels, but then I'll support across sponsored ads on pharmacy and grocery. So I only see kind of the sponsored ad elements of that and need to be in the conversation across the whole channel and what we're doing across the full retail media mix. I think ultimately it's the shopper doesn't distinguish as well where the retail media is coming from, so that is the key at the end of the day. Like, we need to make sure the messaging is consistent everywhere. And I think one way, obviously getting everyone in a room when we're doing this planning is key, but I think also just upskilling and educating the teams is another way that we can kind of combat all of this. I saw in the report that there was a point around the IAB having like a education piece around how we could basically, I don't know, have an hour training for maybe everyone on the team to upskill themselves on retail media. I definitely try and do it across our team, but it is hard to keep on updating everyone on basically all the retail media capabilities that are coming out as well. But yeah, I think that would be key. And I think fundamentally it does come down to team structure. Every business is different, but I think over time it will evolve based on how retail media and other forms of media and marketing is evolving too.
I love that. And I think, again, you are the power couple here, and you are, I'm putting you on the spot, but it feels like you're doing things really well. I know, being brand side myself, that can be a struggle. So I think the learning here or action to this group is, yeah, how do we make it easier, and how do we create those little education spots for brands and for agencies, maybe where the IAB can help, maybe where retail partners can help, lunch and learns, all of those things. They really, really work hard for brands, particularly from an internal perspective. And they're also fun, and that was another theme we were talking to, fun. And it's really important that these teams are having fun and seeing your experiences out in the wild and seeing them as real experiences, which is a nice segue into the next question, which I think everyone would be really keen to hear, which is, what is one activation that you have absolutely adored? It's beat your expectations. It's not about performance, it's about everything, or maybe it's not, it's about one thing that we're not going to expect you to share. And it doesn't need to be a headline about the numbers, just about why it worked for your brand. Was there anything really insightful there that we could get? Garner?
I can go first.
Yeah.
So an example I want to talk to is a campaign that we ran on Amazon. Shameless plug, because I know they are in the room. But in Q4 last year, we basically ran, we wanted to test out Prime Video ads. So we ran a campaign where we had Prime Video, DSP, so consideration ads, and then conversion ads on site, so sponsored ads. And we basically saw that consumers that saw all three ads were 9 times more likely to convert. and we had a 4.5% consideration lift as well across the campaign. So this is the first time we'd run, as I said, Prime Video ads. It was an amazing learning. We had the same consistent creative across all 3 channels. And I think it was just key that we basically trialed this to show how we can bring new to brand customers into the category, and really just grow our brand with Amazon. This has obviously then given us ammunition to invest more money into Prime Video this year. But I think it's really key that we invest in the full funnel approach basically across retail media where we can. And I think a point to mention on this example particularly, because as I said, I work across pharmacy and grocery, but obviously Amazon being online only, it's a lot easier to measure basically these campaigns because it is only online. So it's a hard one to compare to, because I know that for some of the in-store activations we run, we can't fully see like what shoppers are looking at in-store and then how's that conveying online. But yeah, this was a really great example for us for Amazon, and we've continued to learn from that this year.
Thanks for being so candid. Amazon plug. Next.
I think when I think of the example I want to give, there was 2 things that came out of the IAB State of the Nation report, and I think a lot of the discussions earlier today have touched on this. But the first one, I think one of the big things that came out of it was how important trust is to customers still, and it makes sense with cost of living pressures are rising. People want to make sure that if they are buying, that they're buying the right thing, and I think that was something that came out of the report. So we know that credibility and trust is really important, and that's something that we've really been focused on in consumer retail as well. So a campaign that we ran that sort of really lends itself to that sort of trust sentiment was we did a recent social media creator campaign. But the way that we really built trust was, first of all, it was about, it wasn't just about, product promotion, but it was also about thinking about, okay, whatever device that particular creator was going to focus on, it was a specific device for that lifestyle, for what they did for a job, for what their lifestyle was, and their, whether they enjoy certain like hobbies outside of work or whatever it might be. So first of all, it was quite an authentic sort of partnership in that way. But I think what was really different, and it's also something that has come out in earlier conversations, it was measurement as well and how we measured it. We were really intentional about not just thinking about ROAS and revenue when we talk about creator partnerships. We ran a brand lift study as well. So we looked at, movement across brand awareness, brand preference, purchase intent. And I think that's something that also really interested me in the State of the Nation report. Is one of the slides I think they talked to earlier showed that brand awareness goals overall are, advertisers are using less of that goal and declining. But interestingly, purchase intent and action intent have grown just in line with conversions. So that tells us that I think we are all starting to think more about things outside of just bottom of the line, ROAS and revenue. Advertisers and brands, we are wanting to start to explore more about other ways of measuring brand preference and those behavioural metrics. And we saw a really great uplift from that. And I think that was a really good example of having the right measurement is so important. Otherwise, you're going to, I think that like the decisions you can make and whether you think something's successful comes down to the question you've asked at the beginning. And do you have the right frame to judge that? So I thought that was a really good example there.
And I think it's really important as well that we are looking at this space in quite test and learn scenarios. Again, you're both big brands that clearly have backing of your management and CEOs, which is really, really important. But how are you looking at test and learning? And if we don't have standardization right now, which, by the way, I don't think we absolutely need 100%. I was kind of agreeing with what was said earlier. There definitely needs to be some similarities, but with so many different publishers and so many different assets, you're not going to have everything being standard. But again, from a client perspective, surely you're doing things internally as well that help you understand the effect of advertising, not just rely on the publishers. Could you talk to that at all?
Yeah, I think specifically talking more about how we're looking at test and learn ourselves and our own measurement, that side of things. I think that from that perspective, I think it was said earlier too, and like I think this is not the first report that we'll see where measurement is a challenge, particularly in retail media. It's so fragmented, and it's been a challenge for, I think especially for in paid media or any one agency, it's a question that we've been trying to answer forever.
We would be out of jobs if this answer was actually answered, or challenge was answered.
Well, yeah, if there was a solution, we would all be using it. And So I think for me, I definitely agree that we can't necessarily wait for a solution to pop up, and it's not necessarily on retailers and partners to have that. I think two things. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, I do think like commerce and tech partners, like an example, like a Criteo in terms of a commerce tech partner, those types of things that are very new in electronic, the electronic category especially, they are helping, I think, because they are tying in offsite and onsite. So to an extent, they are letting us see things like, if you are running multiple different things, hopefully it'll help with the answer of, starting to see somewhat dedupe data, being able to have a bit more of an ecosystem. So I think that to one extent is helping, and I hope to see that continue to grow in the category. But the other part of it is, and pretty much my example sort of touched on that already, I really think that so it's something that I'm at least personally trying to do more is change the question and not just think about ROAS and revenue. Like, that is the goal, obviously. I get it. Businesses require that. But I would say that, like, if that's the business goal, hey, this is revenue and ROAS, yes, we know that matters. And I would argue that, yes, sales and retail teams, those are the people that are going to be very focused on that. But once we know, okay, this is how much revenue we reviewed, or did we hit our targets, the question then becomes, and this is where marketers come into it, the question is then, well, what did or didn't help drive that? And once you start talking about that, I'm not sure that has to be measured with the lens of ROAS and CPAs all the time. At that point, a lot of things, especially in retail, have to happen before someone purchased. And especially in higher consideration categories like electronics, you've probably already made up your mind by the time you got to the retailer. Like, you probably already know at least 1 to 2 things you're going to pick between. And some things are going to persuade you, and it's probably not going to be the ad that got you there. It's probably going to be a good offer or price. So if, like, in terms of our job and who's looking after that gap, like for me, I'm starting to think, well, whose job is it to look at the part that gets them from discovery to, do I have a use case for this product? Oh, and now I do need that product, and now I'm going to buy it. And I think that journey, that's a behavioural shift that we're talking about. Like, that's behavioural tracking. And so I do think that incremental lift studies and brand lift studies are really important and can help answer, yes, it's a simplistic view, but I mean, in the most simplistic form, is marketing not to ask the question of, hey, okay, we got this result. Did putting money on this channel help that? And what's the likelihood that that would have happened if I hadn't have done this anyway? And lift studies do help with that. Granted, I think that maybe the opportunity is all of those things are still running in silos and they're still running on individual platforms, so it's not a perfect attribution or view. So how do we work with partners, and is that an opportunity maybe for partners and commerce partners to help look at maybe more standardized or holistic lift studies? That might be something that I'd be interested in, but yeah, that's...
Is there anything for you, Isabel, that's missing or you're doing that you could share that might help others?
On the measurement piece, I think one thing to add is, again, because we work across so many different retailers, having category benchmarks provided to us from retailers is at least a way for us to benchmark how we are performing across certain campaigns. And I think the framework that we were talking about earlier in terms of having, as I said, as we spoke about loads today, in-store and online is such a difficult way to piece everything together. So having some sort of framework where you can try and piece that is key. I don't know if that's going to come from a retailer because I think it's too hard for them to pull together. But I think internally it's for us when we're setting out these campaigns to set what the objectives are, bring everyone into that room and set that framework from the very beginning. But yeah, I think the in-store piece and online, we know our shoppers today are so fragmented, it's really hard to piece everything together. So bringing all of that somehow into a framework would be key. Another shameless plug for Amazon, but we've just been testing AMC, so Amazon Marketing Cloud audiences. So we actually can segment 1P audiences through that to create on-site display campaigns. And we're using that to basically A/B test what is working and what pools of audiences are working best for us. I don't know if this is going to somehow maybe evolve across other retail media networks. It would be amazing if we could do that. But yeah, for now, at least for the online players, I know that that's something that they can offer.
Thank you. I'm just checking on time because we've got another couple of questions, plus I'm not sure if people want to go to... Yeah. Okay. Well, we had some favourite questions, so I might go to our favourite, which again was another theme that came very much through from the publishers around creative. We think creative has sort of been underrepresented, probably in the study, maybe because the questions that were asked weren't specific enough, but we definitely think there's a role for kind of looking at the opportunity for retailer publishers to come in and actually help agencies and brands with creative. You guys have some experiences of that, I suppose, being bigger brands and having internal teams. I don't know if you want to maybe touch on that quickly, because we think that could be another half of opportunity for this industry, the creative side of things.
Yeah, I think, creative is key across any of the retail media projects or campaigns that we're running. It kind of comes back to the structure of the teams again and that disconnect, because when you're deciding on where you're running the retail media, it might then be that different teams are creating those creatives. And that's when you're going to get another disconnect, basically. So the key to start off creative kind of optimization, I suppose, is to get everyone in the room again and make sure that that creative is consistent. You've got really clear messaging, and you're actually giving consumers a reason to buy. We know that there's a few limitations in how some of the retail media capabilities are working now. So I think with what you can control, be very clear on what the messaging is. For us as a skincare brand, we're really playing into claims. So making sure that key claims are called out, and ultimately, of course, promotional messaging is key, especially given the day and age that we're living in. So yeah, I think being really clear on those things across the creative is essential. And one thing that we did speak about is, of course, how is AI going to be helping us adapt our creative assets? I think AI can definitely help. It depends if you're a global brand or not. For us, there are clear guidelines on what we sometimes have to do. And I think it also depends on what you're selling. So for skincare, I don't know how much I trust an AI bot showing before and after skincare images.
You end up with the red pigmentation.
True.
You did trust that.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting question to ask your teams, basically, how can you start incorporating that?
Okay. How about you?
Yeah, I think similarly, again, if I put the paid media lens on this, because my role is working with essentially the retailer team and creative, I think the right message at the right time is so important. I think what I in my role have tried to really do proactively is we're really trying to have creative and media plans happen at the same time in parallel, because usually it's either you got the creative and then you put a media plan around that ad to push it, or other way around, you come up with a great media plan and some great strategy and, oh, we don't have video. So, so I think that from that perspective, trying to have them in parallel is really important so that you have the best mix. And that's also, on all touch points as well, and having that cohesiveness. So a big part of my role is making sure that I'm working with the creative team and our retail partners as well to actually make sure that everything is cohesive. I think to the same point around, we talked a lot about the challenge of, on all the different partners and networks, everything's slightly almost the same size, but like one spec off, and it's the same shape, but not the same specs. So how do you resize all of those things? And I think that's where there are AI tools that can assist in that, certainly from the resize perspective. And I think that would be more where you probably can get help in that area of resizing content to fit all those specs. But I think that the actual relationship between creative and brand and paid media, that needs to happen first.
So it's like a full circle moment. I think retail media, it's growing up, and we kind of need to go with it, and we need to think about the ecosystem and kind of how we actually connect the dots as brands and agencies, as well as you guys as the publishers. It's on us as well. So 3 things we kind of want to finish with. There's no one size fits all. I think that came through very much in the last 2 panels as well. And the brands that are pulling ahead are the ones that have bespoke goals, no matter what the brief is, making sure that it's really clear what you're measuring on. Very, very important, otherwise you won't be doing it again. The magic is internal, the magic and the fun. Have some fun with it. Work with these guys, work with the clients to have really sort of big, inspiring conversations. Clients want that, and they do very much need that kind of inspiration from external sources as well as internal, but really, really focus on those solutions rather than, I think, the challenges. And galvanizing the industry, absolutely measurement has to be something that continues, but how do we do that together? And also the role of creative, you know, not one size fits all, but sort of it being further up the ladder, and also the scalability is sort of that opportunity for the BAU, making it easier for clients, I think is a really good opportunity too. So we wanted to finish with that and say thank you guys, really, really candid, open conversations, and hopefully everyone's learned something in the room. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Yep. Shall we?
Hello. Thank you so much. That was such a great discussion. Knowing that there are a few retail media networks in the room now, if there was one thing that you could request, what would be your top request for your retail media network partners right now as a brand?
I would say like a best practice of what are the best brands doing with them right now. They don't have to say who the brands are, but just what does best in class look like?
Mine is complex, but I think like something that's important will be how do we get support for like lift studies and omni-channel studies, you know, for that kind of visibility, because those are things we have to do in silos right now on different platforms. So that would be something that I'd be interested in.
Any other questions? Oh, here we go. Oh, that's all right. Good for me.
Hiya. I was interested to hear about there are a lot of different retail media people in here, most of them I don't know. But yet. But the Galderma lady, outside, so you've obviously spent a ton of cash on Amazon in this last year. What other retail media networks have you used, and is more of your money being retasked out of the other retail market networks into Amazon, or have you found incremental budget?
Good question. If Cetaphil is a brand, it's our biggest brand. I'd say the majority of our sales go through Chemist Warehouse. So the Chemist Warehouse network is massive, and we continue to spend a lot of money with them just because they're our number one retailer. Amazon, I would say, some of it has been incremental budget that we've managed to get from other areas of the business. But I think proving, for example, when we did the Prime Video ads, we aren't investing millions. we do have quite a small budget, so we just wanted to do that as a test and learn to then justify if we did continue doing that in 2026. So yeah, it's a kind of test and learn, I'd say, across Amazon, and being a smaller retailer in the grand scheme of how our other retailers work, it's actually a great place to do that test and learning and getting that clear data. I hope that answers the question.
Hi, I'm Julia from Metcash. Hi, Isabel. Nice to see you. Thank you for a great chat. First of all, I'll be reaching out because I'm going to have you in my quadrangle the next time we have a meeting.
With Sam.
Which is great. You mentioned earlier, though, about the ability that you had to prove that retail media works. And I just wanted to see whether that was the case study of Amazon, or if there's any other sort of what that proof point was, and whether you look to us as a network for that proof, or if you're doing that internally, and then how we can close that gap. It's a few questions.
So I manage the retail media across some of our other channels, not the full scope. So the commercial team still manage some elements of retail media, particularly in store. For the online piece, we've definitely been able to prove a good return on investment of what we're doing online. And I think that has come from a lot of the advancements that a lot of retailers are now making in retail media. So yeah, we've made good advancements there. And I think, sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Are you doing that measurement yourself, or?
Yeah, so So again, we tend to ask for those category benchmarks from the retailers, and that really helps to justify internally if it's working or not. And I would also say that, yeah, I suppose we've actually worked with a few retailers who have given us in-depth studies around how we are growing market share in the category, and I think that has also really helped to justify that incremental investment. So any data that we can get from the retailers on that, how we compare to other brands in the skincare category, really helps to support that incremental investment.
That's brilliant. GT, Bree, Izzy, thank you so much